My computer won't crash this time. Hello, welcome everybody. I'm Laura Rogers, and this is SharePoint Power Hour. This is our live show that we do every Wednesday at 11 Central, and this week our topic is going to be OneDrive for Business, and I have a couple of other people in the room with me, as you can see on the screen. We have Corey, who's always here, and we have special guest Todd Clint. So let's see. So Corey, I'll get you to say a few things, who you are, introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll let Todd introduce himself and say why the heck he's here and why he's crashed our show.
Yeah, why is Todd here? No, I'm just kidding.
Very valid question.
So I'm Corey. Most of you know me, at least from this. I haven't been on in a couple weeks, but I'm back. Haha. I've been doing SharePoint for like 11 years. I do out-of-the-box stuff and play with Office 365 and fix computers and, you know, ride my new motorcycle. It's fine. Yeah, that's me.
And I'm Todd. So I'm watching this thing. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I can't tell when I'm live because I'm still seeing Corey. So I'm Todd Clint. I'm a SharePoint person. Laura and I have known each other for 10 years now, or something like that, or 8 years.
At least 7.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I've been coworkers on and off for bits of that. My focus is mostly administration, though with Office 365 and all the fun things there, administration means different things these days, but I'm mostly an on-prem server kind of guy. I like PowerShell and SQL and kittens.
And long walks on the beach, right?
Long walks on the beach.
Turtles.
I like a lot of things, and I can only assume that the reason that Laura invited me on today was because all of the real people that the people that provide value, were busy today, and it was kind of a desperation thing. So feel bad for Laura, is what I'm saying. It's a desperate thing.
Welcome, Todd. And today, you guys, I did get a new computer. I got a Dell XPS thing, like it's a desktop computer. It's a big honking computer. So I still have, I realized I didn't have any audio coming out of the computer, and so I went ahead and just threw my headset on right before I started here because I don't have any speakers. So I'm still getting, the glitches in the webcam settings and everything figured out. So scrambling, of course, at the last minute as usual. We are chatting in Slack. So there's a link in the YouTube video to request to join Slack if you haven't already. And then when those arrive, I have to invite each person manually. So then I send you an invite. It's IW Mentor, that's the name of my company. iwmentor.slack.com is the channel. So everybody jump in and say hi. We use the little Power Hour channel inside of there where we chat during Power Hours. So you guys can just have fun, chat with each other, ask us questions, have a great time. You can do silly little Giphies. Iffy OneDrive. That's kind of boring. All right. So last year, Todd and I were speakers at Microsoft Ignite, and we taught a all-day session on OneDrive for Business.
8 hours of nothing but OneDrive for Business.
So it seems comical. We did manage to, well, both of us, we can talk. We enjoyed it. We have no problem talking. So we managed to fill up the whole day, and there was actually plenty of content to talk about because guess what? OneDrive for Business is a document library.
The secret's out, yeah. It's SharePoint.
I was surprised. We were surprised that so many people that signed up that were in that class didn't know that.
Yeah.
We had a couple of people that said, I didn't want to learn about SharePoint. Why are we talking about SharePoint? I just wanted to learn about OneDrive for Business. Well, that's what it is. So if you remember back in the old days of My Sites, and everybody had a My Site, you kind of still do, but they're kind of buried in there, and everybody had a shared documents, just a library in your own My Site. Well, that's what evolved to be OneDrive. So OneDrive is really just each person's own document library in their My Site. right?
Yeah, and so Microsoft, they do this great thing where they make funny names for stuff and all that, and so to completely confuse everybody about what OneDrive is, and we should probably do this to set expectations for this Power Hour thing. There are many OneDrives, and when Microsoft says OneDrive, they can mean one of many things. So there's a thing that we're going to talk about today mostly, which is OneDrive for Business. As opposed to the consumer version of OneDrive, which we affectionately refer to as OneDrive for pleasure, as opposed to as for business. So this is OneDrive for Business. And you think, wow, that's kind of confusing. Microsoft took it a step further. Depending on what product you're in and where you're at, OneDrive for Business can mean in Office 365, in SharePoint Online, or OneDrive for Business can mean on-prem SharePoint, your My Site document library there. So any of you that get confused during this talk, it is not because Laura and I are doing a poor job explaining the content. That is not, let that escape your mind. It's because there are many OneDrives to speak of, and we will try to be clear about that. But yes, you need a map and a whiteboard and all that to keep track.
Yeah.
I like that deflection, Todd. That's good.
I like to set expectations.
It's definitely not our fault. Just blame Microsoft. Blame Lori.
Before we even start talking, yeah, blame Lori. She's not even here, just because she works there. Poor Lori. So, and one of the main common misconceptions right when we got started teaching this and talking about it was that because Microsoft calls it OneDrive and it's called OneDrive no matter if you're on premises or in the cloud, people thought that if they were on premises and they used OneDrive, they were putting their files in the cloud. But it's just a document library in your My Site. So you can do the hybrid thing now, though, right,
Yep.
Todd?
Yep, that has changed, and we'll talk about that and how awesome that is.
Okay, so that's what it is. It's just a document library. So once everybody understands that's all it is, then it makes it a lot more simple.
Yeah.
I don't know if we would necessarily need to share any of these slides that we did. We're both kind of looking at just the general concepts we talked about. It was a whole day though, so we're not going to go through the slide deck or anything. But just the main sort of structure that we had was the first thing we talked about was migration. Then we talked about the whole directory synchronization concept, and then rolling out OneDrive for Business and getting users over to it and start using it, and then we talked about adoption, and then after deployment, what do you do? And there have been some sort of newer things and changes and updates in it since we did this session too, right?
Yeah, a bunch of new stuff's come out because this was a year ago. Well, more than a year ago because it was April or May?
May of 2015.
Yeah. Now so, I understand there are people out on the internet who mock OneDrive, who have stumbled across, and I don't know how they did it, have stumbled across deficiencies in OneDrive for a couple of years now. And to speak to this thing from a year ago, Microsoft realized like a year and a half ago that OneDrive kind of stunk, and they have doubled down and then doubled down again. And if I knew what the cube of 2 was, they have put a lot of effort into this. So a lot of great things have happened in the last year and a half. So yeah, we have a lot of fun things to talk about that we couldn't talk about last year.
Right, and so we both are, Todd and I are both really admins. I have an admin background, so one of the first things I think of with OneDrive is how can we make it so, just like when you were, being an admin of Active Directory and you go into somebody's profile and you say, I want this default drive to be the H drive, and then everybody's shared drive is the H drive, and that's where they all keep their own personal files. Well, okay, so how do you make OneDrive be that? So that everybody just automatically, that's where their files get saved. So that was one of the first things that I wanted to try and do when we were teaching this, was show people how to do that. That didn't exist yet at that point.
Yeah.
So they've actually made improvements in that case too. So I guess we'll just go sort of in order as far as the migration stuff. You got to figure out where your current content is, and if you are going to migrate it to OneDrive, because.
Yeah. So like Laura said, as IT folks, we are efficient. Some folks like to think of that as lazy. I don't think that's an accurate representation. But we as IT folks, we get into this idea, like Laura said, where we're like, all right, we got the H drive, and we've got Laura's H drive here, and now we're going to do this OneDrive for Business thing. I'm just going to click this, and I'm just going to drag it over. And technically speaking, that mostly works. It works better now than it did a year or two ago, because there used to be a lot of restrictions on file names, the length and the characters that could be in them, how many folders you could have, file sizes, all that kind of stuff. And that's one of the things that was easy for people to mock OneDrive for Business for, and Microsoft has really cleared that up a lot in the last year or so. So it is technically possible. Just go into that H drive, lasso everything, drag it over, and then as IT folks, we wash our hands of it and we're done. We have efficiently gotten rid of that problem. But that's a really bad way to do things. There is a lot of overlap between what H drives do and what OneDrive for Business does. But before we figure out how we're going to use it, we need to step back and look at OneDrive for Business and figure out what it does and what purpose it serves. Do we really need those documents from 1997 that are in our H drive? Do we need to bring those to OneDrive for Business? Maybe. Maybe we want to have them for searchability or whatever, but maybe we don't. And so you definitely have to pay some attention to, before you even get to the technical fiddly bits of migrating, there's the thing, do we really want to migrate it at all? And unfortunately, that's some talking and meetings and boring non-technical stuff.
Yeah.
Important
A lot of people opt to do is just give everybody an empty OneDrive and just let them decide, or just say all your new files going forward are going in there. So one of the just the simple concepts that we talked about with quote migrating is, an end user can just go to the OneDrive, click the sync button, and that will put the OneDrive for Business as a drive in their computer, and they can see the files there.
Yeah.
And then what they can do is they can go into just any files they have in the file system and drag them over into there, just all using Windows Explorer. And that's just a simple thing that just end users can do themselves without IT even being involved. And it turns out that's what a lot of people are doing, just because of, like you said, you don't necessarily want all that old crap.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that is in IT that has changed a lot. Is you and I, we're old farts. We've been doing this IT thing for a while, and we can remember the days when the technology, both hardware and software, at work was better than the stuff at home. Like, we got excited if work was going to buy us a laptop because it was going to be way better than anything we had at home. And starting kind of with the iPhone and progressing even worse in the last couple of years, that's completely flip-flopped. Now the technology at home is way better than anything we have at work. And I'm talking hardware, phones, laptops, whatever, but I'm also talking software and tools. And so a lot of people at home are using stuff like Dropbox and Google Drive and all these consumer products that share files and all that, and they've gotten used to that. They expect that functionality. And so it's good that OneDrive...
And on their phones, and being able to do the files on their phones,
Yeah, and so it's imperative that whatever work solution we give to people has to have at least that functionality, and that wasn't always the case. And OneDrive has definitely recognized that. So yeah, so now the tools, when I'm used to sharing pictures of my kids with my mom, and we do that on Dropbox because she doesn't need to know how it works, but it just shows up in Windows, and she knows how to click Windows and all that kind of stuff. We now have that functionality that's pretty good with OneDrive for Business. So using the sync, like Laura suggested, is a great idea, because it gives users a thing that they're used to, a way to drag files across, because they've always done it in Windows, because they do it with Dropbox, and that's an easy way to transition them without them getting all freaked out and scared. So I really like that one. Where in today's talk are we going to talk about the clients?
We can talk about it now.
You were on a roll. I don't want to.
Somebody, C-Coy in the chat window says, I think we run into it here, that users and management think OneDrive is all the same. Oh, so the end users think when they go to OneDrive, everybody goes to the same OneDrive, like they're sharing that like a public folder or something, like a shared drive.
So let's talk about
not a shared drive. It's your own drive. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of that. So that is a possibility. There is certainly OneDrives that are shared that that Laura and I would have, but it starts getting ugly. And
they're really meant to be personal. Yeah.
Yes. Here's where we're going to get down to an ugly rabbit hole, and I bring this up because as the audience for this, these are things people are going to have these questions, and you need to be able to understand all of this, even the pieces that don't make sense to you. So out of the box, you go to Office 365, you go to whatever, you click the sync. It's going to hook up to your OneDrive client locally, and it's going to sync, like Laura said, your personal My Documents library. And that works like a champ. That works better now than it has worked in the history of OneDrive and SkyDrive, both. If you want to do the thing that Sequoia is talking about, so now you've done good governance and information architecture. I'm trying to get all the buzzwords in. And you've got a project going on somewhere, so you create a new team site, and Laura's there, and I'm there, and Corey's there, and Shane's there for whatever reason that Shane's there. And I'm going to be taking a business trip, and I want to bring all those files onto my laptop so that when I'm on the plane, I can work on them and provide some sort of value and sync back up. If I go into that shared document library in that team site, there's my friend, the sync button. I'm in good shape. I've got the world by the tail. I'm going to be so productive. I click that I click that sync button, and that's when the wheels start flying off and all that. Right now, as of August 24th, 2016, the OneDrive client that you get, if you've got everything current, is called the next generation client, which I wonder how we're going to talk about that when the next generation clients come out. But anyway, the next gen sync client will only sync your My Site. That's the only thing that it will sync. And it does a bang-up job on it, but it's the only one that it will do. So when you go to that team site and go to that shared document library and click that sync button, you may or may not actually be able to sync anything because it requires a different OneDrive client to sync to that folder. And what I've found in the different Office 365 tenants that I have and the work that I do, it depends heavily on which version of Office you have on the machine that you run that on. The next gen sync client is Office 2016-ish. So it comes as part of that, and it works well with all of that. The previous version, the one that you need to sync to non-My Site stuff, is the Office 2013 version of the OneDrive client. So if you're on a machine with Office 2013, you're okay, because that's already installed somewhere, and it's gathering dust, and it gets fired up, and everything works. And you can log in. You'll have multiple OneDrive icons in your taskbar. You'll have a blue one and a white one, and they will work together in tandem, and they will sync all of the things if you have Office 2013 installed. If you have Office 2016 installed, it will try to install the Office 2013 version of OneDrive. But the Office 2016 version of OneDrive says, oh, hell no. And you get these installer errors, and you get all this problem. I have one machine where I've not been able to crack that nut. I've not been able to get that to work. In theory, if I uninstall all of Office 2016, click the My Site folder, or the non-My Site, the Team Site folder, get that client going, then install Office 2016, everything should be good to go. But that is a horrible thing. So the reason I bring this up is if you are a business IT pro and you're looking at rolling OneDrive out, obviously, you're going to roll it out in small groups. You're going to do IT first and all that kind of stuff. You were going to do that anyway. But make sure you test it with users that are using both Office 2013 and Office 2016, and test it in the user's My Site and some other team site. And I will put in Slack, and I'll send Laura the email with link. There is a TechNet article on how to figure out which OneDrive client you're using, because there are at least 3 different OneDrive clients out there, and we haven't even talked about how to sync to on-prem OneDrive yet. We haven't even gotten near that. So that has caused a problem for customers that we've had trying to figure out how to sync and what to sync. So for Sequoia's question in the background, which kind of, or in the chat room, which started all of this, it can do the thing that your customers and users think that it is, a shared location, but before they can do that reliably with the syncing, because of all that, because OneDrive can be the location, OneDrive can be the client, OneDrive is the technology that syncs the two, lots of OneDrives to choose from.
It's also simple.
Yes. OneDrive, that's all you need, Corey.
Yeah, it's just OneDrive.
Are they going to put the document libraries back? Because that's really odd.
Yeah, so obviously Microsoft realized that this is not a good thing. This is a step backward. And I think if you go to, roadmap.office.com, they've got all the things that are going to be coming up in Office. And I'm pretty sure sometime by the end of this calendar year, they're going to add that functionality into the next-gen sync client. So the goal is the next-gen sync client will be the only client that you need. But like right now, as I'm looking at my task tray, I've got the little blue OneDrive, which is non-My Site Oh, hell. No, I think the blue drive is corporate my site. The white one is consumer and non-my-site. I forget.
Yeah. So that's Todd's synopsis of just the. I'm sorry about my webcam. I keep playing with the settings trying to fix it. About all the different clients. So the client itself, there's the client, of course, and then there are the apps, and there's just using the OneDrive. But then there's just the fact that it's just a document library, and the fact and like what are you going to put in it too. So there's like a whole other aspect
Yep.
to it.
Yep.
There's this thing, so when customers, just one of the things that we mentioned in our session, when customers are trying to figure out what all data is out there and where everybody has their files and stuff,
Oh, yeah.
the telemetry dashboard. So it, let's see, is it part of, yeah, it's part of Office 2013 and 2016. So like if you just go to your Windows prompt and start typing telemetry, and if you have Office 2013 or 2016, I don't know, probably professional or something, you'll see the telemetry dashboard come up. And what that is you have to go create like a SQL database, but basically it's a dashboard that lets you basically run a command that scans your whole network and all the desktops and figures out where all the files are and then spits out a report. So, I mean, there's a lot of work to it, but Microsoft has thought through that and has built this sort of little just free built-in tool for you to try doing that.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. As tech folks, we love the technical pieces and all of this. When you're trying to roll this out to your business, especially if you're looking at going to Office 365 hybrid or full or whatever, the kind of reports that this telemetry tool pulls out are exactly the kind of things that pointy-haired bosses love to see. They love to see bar graphs and pie graphs about the kind of bars you like to go to, bar graphs about your favorite types of pie, all these kind of things. So this is a good way to get that information and be able to say we would save X amount of money a year if we use Office 365 because we've got these kind of documents and we can put it all up there. So that is a tool to generate some of those things.
Okay. So let's see, we've talked about the files and the migration and figure out where the files are and how end users could migrate. Of course, you could buy a third-party tool. That there are third-party tools that exist out there to help you like migrate large quantities of data to just any SharePoint you're migrating from any other SharePoint or file system to any other SharePoint.
It's just a document library. So any way you would put a file in a document library.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of it. It's so
So I think the next topic could be we could talk about just the whole single sign-on thing, and we start talking about having on-prem and having like the OneDrive settings that exist in your admin in Office 365 and kind of how that works and what the options are. And I remember in our session you talked about single sign-on. You talked about some technical stuff with AD things.
I broke out PowerShell. Yeah. So this is one of those things. I love this aspect of it all. So Laura's going to have to do the whole.
I might pull up my admin center and look at some of that stuff.
Yep. So before your end users are going to embrace this, you have to set it up in such a way that it doesn't suck for them to use. And I'm talking about OneDrive and Office 365 and all of that. And the method right now to do that is to sync up your Windows Active Directory accounts to Azure Active Directory. And Azure Active Directory is the thing behind the curtain that is the authentication for Office 365. So even if you're not doing Azure or you don't even know what Azure is or have never played with Azure, in reality, all of your Office 365 identities live in Azure Active Directory or Azure AD. And what Microsoft has done is they've provided us a tool called Azure Active Directory Sync or Azure Active Directory Connect. Don't share that, Laura. It's like very Inception-y there. So Azure Active Directory Connect is software that you install on-prem, and you install it on a domain member, preferably not a domain controller, and you pick some or all of your Windows Active Directory accounts and sync them up to Azure Active Directory. The value of that is now when your users click into OneDrive or jump into Office 365 in any form or fashion, it's the same username and password that they use on-prem. And so that way they don't have to worry about remembering the username and password. When they change their password on-prem, it gets changed in Office 365. If they use their phone to get in there, if you've enabled all that, it's their regular work email address. It makes things a lot easier for them and hopefully fewer calls to your help desk.
Okay, so it's like every time I look at this admin center in Office 365, it's got new stuff. So
Every time, yeah.
apparently there have been complaints about what end users are doing with OneDrive and allowing them or not. Admins, we like to have control, and there
Yep.
was less control when we did our session a year and a half ago. So
Yeah.
now you can actually hide OneDrive for Business if you want to as part of
Aw.
from Office 365, and you can hide sites, which is called SharePoint now, and that's these things. That's
Yep.
OneDrive and SharePoint. So you can set it to hide those, and you can also change, like there's this new UI now. So we can change the UI to the new experience, or use the classic experience, and that's that whole new look and feel that your libraries have. And then look at this, you can actually hide the sync button now. Who knew?
That's horrible.
And there's going to
But
be more coming too, because in that roadmap thing, there's enhanced OneDrive for Business user management in Office 365 Admin Center that's still in development. So there's still more stuff coming.
yeah, like specifically changing this to say SharePoint and making it more accurate and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, what was I going to say? So the whole sync thing. I mean, think about it. If people are syncing their OneDrives or syncing anything, it's pulling that entire library down to their hard drive. So sometimes, your companies might not want to have people having entire copies of the library. I know that it's been a request in the past to make it so you can sync just a specific folder. I think that exists still in the personal OneDrive, but not yet in the OneDrive for Business.
I believe that's the case.
And then this is just the whole new experience thing. And there was over here the hybrid part. And that's some of the stuff that, like it's got the whole hybrid OneDrive and hybrid OneDrive and sites features and hybrid extranet sites. Wow, that's new.
Yes, I've not seen that one. So do we want to talk about the hybrid stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. So starting with SP1-ish on 2013, SharePoint 2013, and 2016, just out of the box, RTM, you have this ability now to have hybrid scenarios. And I think that's where we're all going. If you're not there yet, you're going to be there if you have any kind of on-prem software. One of the hybrid scenarios, and the one that I would recommend you start with, honestly, is OneDrive for Business. So we talked about how there are many OneDrives, various and sundry OneDrives about everywhere. Right now, if you have on-prem SharePoint 2013 or 2016, when your users click the OneDrive link anywhere inside of the interface, it takes them to an on-prem My Site document library, and that's where all their stuff is. Once you get identity figured out, get all that syncing set up, you can go into SharePoint 2013 and 2016 in Central Admin, or you can use the wizard here that Laura was showing you, and you can set up this hybrid experience where some or all of your on-prem users, when they click the OneDrive link up in the Dealy widget, the menu bar up there at the top, instead of taking them to their on-prem My Site document library, their on-prem OneDrive, it bounces them out to their Office 365 OneDrive instead. So the thing I like about that is a couple of things. It's a good way to dip your toe in the hybrid pool, because now you can have your users play with Office 365, play with the interface, play with the app, the phone app, and all that kind of thing, but with content that is not necessarily that important. If it's, if they lose track of where the pictures of the company picnic are at that they took, that's not the worst thing in the world. But it gets them comfortable, and then they can start creating other sites out there, things like that.
So let me get that straight, what you just said. So you can make it so that when people are on-prem and they click the OneDrive button, that's actually a OneDrive that's in the cloud. And can you do that vice versa too? If you're in the cloud, your OneDrive's on-prem? No, probably not.
No. So yes to your first question, no to your second question. So yes, and for those of us who do the the admin stuff, what's really happening, and I didn't realize this until the hybrid stuff came out, that OneDrive link is an audience-controlled link. And so the thing that it points to is controlled by an audience. And the way this works is you create You get all your users synced up, and you get all the licensing things happened in Office 365. And then you create an audience for all the people you want to use the hybrid OneDrive. And what happens then is when, let's say Laura gets the new stuff, I don't, because I haven't passed whatever test or shown proficiency in OneDrive, so they don't want me playing with that yet. When Laura goes to any page inside of SharePoint on-prem, that OneDrive link is an audience link. She's in the audience that sees hybrid. It pops her out to Office 365. She does amazing and cool things and loves the cloud. When I go to the same page and I see that same link, it links to my on-prem my site until whoever is controlling that migration goes in and adds me to that audience. So that's an interesting, cool.
But you can only have one, right?
Well, you can only have the link to one. And here's another weird thing about that. So let's say Laura, a very proficient SharePoint user, has done a very good job saving things in her on-prem OneDrive, not work things, but not things that she shares, using the governance and all that. She gets this thing the very next time she goes in and clicks that OneDrive after she's been added to this audience. It's going to pop her out to Office 365, and there's going to be nothing there. Because all that changes is that link, the thing to that link. So technically, Laura has 2 OneDrives now. And if she knows the URL to her on-prem OneDrive, she can paste it in manually, or if she's got a shortcut somewhere or whatever, and all of her stuff is still there, but just that link takes her to the on-prem one. So then you have to do the migration stuff, open them both up with Lasso or use a third-party tool to move them out. But it is all still there.
I can see that would be confusing.
How would anybody lose track of that?
That wouldn't scare users at all if all of a sudden they went into OneDrive and it was just empty.
Yeah. So again, the audience in this power hour is IT pros and all that kind of stuff. These are the kind of bugaboos that are going to get you when you do this migration. So long before Fred in accounting clicks that, thinks he's lost all of his beautiful spreadsheets. Long before that happens, we have sent Fred an email and said, hey, there's going to be these changes. One of the things that's going to look like all your documents were deleted. They weren't. Here's the process for moving them over or whatever. Now, there's a 50-50 chance that Fred's going to freak out and call IT anyway, but at least when you write that document, you shave off 50% of those requests and calls.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where that setting was for the OneDrive where you get to pick which audience it goes to. It's like maybe they moved it.
It's in Central Admin, Hybrid. Yeah, I don't have a
yeah, see, so now when I go to configure Hybrid, it's that whole hybrid OneDrive where it tried to launch that software just now, and when yeah.
In on-prem Central Admin? Oh.
No, not okay. So you're only talking about on-prem. Okay, so
yeah,
I
you
was
have to do it on-prem. Yeah, you have to
okay.
set the audience on-prem because that's where the link is. The link is in on-prem.
That's true. Okay, got it. All right, that's not confusing. Okay.
So the thing that Laura's talking about, we'll talk about this from the hybrid standpoint because this is kind of cool. As you've seen from the last 30 minutes, this hybrid thing is incredibly confusing and ever changing. The links that we saw a month ago are different than the ones we see now. But they're working towards this model where when you start hybriding things together, the workflow they see in their head is you log in via browser to Central Admin on your on-prem farm. Log in as your farm account or whatever, get that ready to go. Open up another tab, log into your Office 365 portal as a portal admin, get authenticated on both ends, and then the page that Laura was at in Office 365 has all these automated tools that help button things together. When Laura and I did our thing last year, there was PowerShell and all these kind of crazy knobs that you had to turn and switches you had to flip and all that. They're slowly automating that. And once you get into a web session that is authenticated against on-prem and authenticated against your tenant admin, they've got these packages that you can download that will automate all of that. So that's what was trying to happen when you were hitting your Office 365 deal. We lost your audio, Laura.
And Google Hangout yelled at me too. It says, hey, you're trying to talk. On a more technical note, I was going to say, so where you were talking about things like ADFS and Azure Active Directory and configuring the DirSync and PowerShell and all those things in our session, all that configuration just to have a hybrid environment is much easier and is that what you're trying to say, that there's more of like a wizard interface for that?
Yes, though that wasn't where I was going. So,
Okay.
so the SharePoint side, so the post identity piece has gotten significantly easier in the last year, but also the pre-identity piece has also gotten significantly easier. For basic things, if you're a smallish company and you've got a pretty basic thing, to get identity sync going is basically the much beloved next finish. It's almost that simple now. And then once you get that all in place and it's all up in Office 365, getting the hybrid bolted between your on-prem farms and Office 365 is that little wizard thing
That little wizard. Okay.
that you were downloading in the middle of broadcasting on the internet, soaking up all your bandwidth.
I canceled it. It just kept going and going. Yeah.
It's like the Energizer Bunny. Yeah.
It's all good. All right. Okay. So that's I don't know. Did we have anything else to talk about having to do with the identity piece and the hybrid portion?
Probably not. I have
Okay.
done a bunch of like webinars and stuff on the identity thing. So if anybody's got any questions, you can reach out to me, todd.clint@rackspace.com, @toddclint on Twitter, and I can point you to some recordings and things like that. Do we have a question in the chat room? Are you going to grab that, or?
On OneDrive on-prem has blocked file types. OneDrive in Office 365 does not have any blocked file types.
I don't
Good to know.
Well,
No?
I think it does. So Lou 240 in the chat room, shout out to Lou. There are a couple of things there. So there are blocked file types. So you can't upload a, hackmycomputer.exe into OneDrive for Business. You can copy it into the synced folder on your machine, but it's not going to sync it up to Office 365 so that some unsuspecting user comes by and clicks it and you hack their machine. So there are file types that are blocked, and then there are file characters inside of file names that are blocked, because since this is a web thing, there's the potential that you're going to access this through a web page, and so there's some trickery they have to do with file, characters and file names. But that has they've eradicated a lot of that, so that's not as bad as it was again a year ago.
Good. All right. Do you know, so licensing is a concern, right? Because when people are using, like if you're using SharePoint 2016 on-prem and you want to use like OneDrive, or you want them to be able to use Power Apps and things like that, all those users have to have a license in Office 365, right, to be able to have that. Okay.
Yeah. So a couple things about that. As we've hit a few times, OneDrive is just a document library. It's just SharePoint, and so you have to have a license to SharePoint. So your users have to have that, and there are a bunch of different licenses that provide that. There's the E1s and the E3s. There is a OneDrive specific license, I believe, if you're just going to use that, but it is just SharePoint, so you need to be licensed inside of SharePoint.
Okay. All right, a couple of the other things that we talked about were, of course, as admins or any company, you're going to be concerned with what people are putting in OneDrive, how people are sharing their OneDrive, how you can see that, how you can control that, and then, what's the admin experience like for once you have rolled out OneDrive and once you're using it. So they've actually they've added a lot of stuff in there. So you've always been able to go into the eDiscovery. I did a whole other power hour about eDiscovery. You've always been able to go in there, and there's a way to be able to see, like, it's just SharePoint search. It's just files in a library, right? You're just doing like a report on all files in a library. But now they've added really pretty reporting and really nice reporting, and also more controls over the sharing portion, because people are worried about what people are sharing and how they're sharing it, and then what happens with files once they're shared. So
yeah, so that's a big thing. I don't know if they get the news of where you guys are all at, but security and things that are in the cloud and all that has been huge, even huger now than it was before. And so yeah, this control over who's sharing what and being able to get reports on that and when things have changed, that has gotten good. Again, these are exactly the kind of reports that pointy-haired bosses want to see in slide decks and all that. So the ones that you can't export, you can take screenshots of, and perfect for embedding in PowerPoint or.
Isn't this pretty? Look at this.
That is good stuff.
Ooh, so I just clicked on reports in the admin center and click usage. And it's got Exchange, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Skype for Business. So I can click on OneDrive, and I can see my little chart. So it's got, this is just my demo tenant. So like Corey's got 50 files in there in his OneDrive, and I've got 191. And so it shows you how many files people have active files. I don't know if Corey, that means he has 5 files open. I'm not sure what that means, but look, you can sort by these columns too.
That's confusing because I only have 3 files in my OneDrive.
That's awesome. Maybe it's counting the versions. I don't know.
Maybe. That's weird.
Yeah. So then it shows your files. You got accounts, and then you got files, and then you got storage. So you can flip between all those and be able to see just this little nice graph showing how much storage is used with a list of all the people and their OneDrives just right below it. So that's kind of nice. And then look, you can go out too, just like any kind of nice reporting, and be able to, and you can hover over, you can click on little links in here and see specific little subsets of data. So when I click on that, it shows me like that sort of snapshot, and you can export it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right, like Todd said, like people love to have pretty little graphs that they can, email out or show people.
Yeah, spiky-haired bosses.
Oh yeah, and the other thing about this is when there's a cost to this, and Microsoft has done a good job in licensing Office 365 with on-prem SharePoint, but there is a cost involved with this, and so you can go into these reports like Laura's showing, and you can say, here's where we're getting the most value out of Office 365. We have a lot of people using Exchange, not so much in OneDrive, or vice versa, and so this is exactly the kind of stuff. As IT pros, we get to spend a lot of time up to our elbows in fun bits and technology stuff, but it's increasingly becoming important for us to be able to justify all these things that we want to pay for, and these reports are a good part of that.
So I'll go over to SharePoint now and go to I think I already had SharePoint open, and go to the sharing concept in here. So you have sharing. That's the other thing that people are worried about. So you have some default sharing settings for this is not just SharePoint permissions and who can access what. This is for people sharing stuff outside of your organization, which people seem to love this feature in just the concept of being able to do this. It's just once you let people start sharing, like, you want to know what's going on, right? So you got several different levels here. They've added a lot more functionality. They've added a lot more options in here. So first of all, you can just turn it off completely. You can allow it only with external users that exist in your organization's directory. So and I can show you what those look like in the directory too. Let me show you. Now I don't know how to add them to the directory just from here to make for external users, but they look a little bit different. Like they have like a little, they're not in here anymore. They have like a little pound sign in their names, and they get added in here when you externally share with them. So that would be only allow sharing that for those people that you've already got in there, and then allow users to invite and share with authenticated external users. That means external users that either they have an Office 365 account for their company, for some other company, or they have just a Microsoft account that they're logging in with. So so that they have to log in and use that account to be able to share, to be able to get to that content. And then sharing to authenticated external users and using anonymous access links. And don't you love it? You can make them expire now. You used to only be able to do that through PowerShell.
Yeah, and I love the one below that you can whitelist domains.
Ooh, yeah. So I can start typing, here's my company. So if I only want people in my WonderLaura domain to share with people in the iwmentor.com domain, I could do that. Or I could block them.
Yeah, so I think it's so if you wanted to share something with me, you could say only share with people from email addresses with @toddclint.com. So it's not who the sharer is, but the sharee. And they're saying they lost your screen there. I'm able to watch your screen sharing, but the chat room is saying they don't see it anymore.
Okay, let me see. It says I'm sharing. I'll stop and turn it on again. Let me see. Every now and then the Google Hangouts will do that.
The good news is they're seeing
I can still see it too.
And not seeing Corey or I's ugly mugs.
Okay, So yeah, so the
I
people
resemble
in
that
my,
remote.
so if I'm in my Wonderlaura tenant and people are working in this tenant, this allows them to share with people that are in this iwmentor.com tenant. They can't just go share it with their mom on her Gmail account or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And the external users must accept. So what was happening is people would receive an invitation and then they would just forward it to somebody else. So then anybody who got the invitation could just click on the link and go to your content, which is kind of sketchy, right? So now they added this. External users must accept sharing invitations using the same account that the invitations were sent to. And you only get that if you, it says, when sharing via anonymous links, people receive the link, don't need to sign in, so that doesn't apply if it's an anonymous link. So I don't like that whole anonymous link thing. I kind of like this one better, personally.
Yeah, and there's business cases for both of them, but yeah, once the old adage, once something gets out on the internet, it's out there, and the anonymous stuff is kind of scary.
Right. And then one more thing in here with your site collections is once you've set those settings up at just in the sharing tab, you can actually go to your individual site collections and click sharing. And then you can change the settings for that site collection as well. And come on, Office 365. So right now, like anybody using the Corey test, like in Corey's site collection there, nobody in there is allowed to share anything. So you could put your more confidential content in a place that just doesn't allow external sharing. And then the thing that got people, remember this when we were teaching our class, was the My. So in the real world, in on-prem, each My site is its own site collection, right? But all the My site collections aren't listed here. It's just this one. So you have to click the one and click sharing.
Yes. and this is frustrating. So go back to that list for a second. What this doesn't show, and what Laura and I were just confused and befuddled that they would let this happen, is it's not showing any of the My site collections in this list. There's no good way to see it. So I mean, obviously the sharing piece is different, and there's the underlying thing that Laura could have 1,000 My sites in her tenant, or she could have 0, and there's no way to tell from here.
Yeah, that's a PowerShell thing probably, though, I think, that you can at least see them.
I can't remember if you can see them in PowerShell or not.
Oh, okay. I haven't done PowerShell in Office 365 in a few months, so I don't remember.
Yeah. But that was one thing that surprised both of us. They're like, no way, but yeah.
Yeah. So when you click sharing for that quote site collection, this applies to all the OneDrives. So this is the My thing, that's where all the OneDrive data is. So this is important. This is where you want to control, maybe don't allow people to use anonymous links when they're sharing from their OneDrive, and kind of be careful about that, right? Is that good to know? You guys like that little tidbit?
Yeah, because again, if you give, Fred an accounting permission, that means that anybody can use that same permission.
Yeah. So, all right, so I stopped sharing my screen. Okay, so that was the other end of sort of the more admin-y part. Do you have any other things you can think of that admins were concerned about?
So a couple of things, and we've only got 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that you get to talk about whatever cool things you want to talk about. When we were at SP TechCon a couple of months ago, you and I were part of various discussion things and roundtables and all that. I was amazed at the number of questions people asked about OneDrive for Business, because it's kind of always been this stepchild thing that was there that geeks like you and I got excited about, but wasn't really applicable in the real world. But there was a bunch of questions about it, and I don't have all the answers, but it was questions like, how do we prevent our users from using OneDrive? How do we prevent them from sharing in OneDrive? How do we make our users use OneDrive? And things like that. So again, we don't have the answer to all those questions. There's a few resources out there. Sharegate.com, they've got a blog that has a bunch of OneDrive posts on it that answer some of these questions. But there's all these weird little nooks and crannies that I never thought of when I started playing with OneDrive that become a big deal, like the whole My Site thing. You can't granularly give one person permission to share their My Site and not give everybody. So make sure that you spend a lot of time testing this. And again, normally the thing that Laura and I talk about is you want to have IT try it first, and bring those folks in, and then once your IT folks and your support folks have a good handle on it, then you should already have in place a group of champions inside of your business. And these are people that are not tech folks, not IT folks. This is people from accounting and marketing and whatever. But the people that have kind of risen up over the years that use SharePoint a lot, you want to know who those people are at a time. You want to trickle it out to them and let them try
Your
it.
power user rock stars.
Exactly. Power user rock stars, those folks are the ones because they are on your side, so they're going to be more tolerant of annoying things that the software is going to bring up. And they will use and abuse SharePoint in ways that we don't think of and know better than to do. And so you want to get those guys in. But there's just all these really weird little things that you don't think about. Be ready for those.
Okay. Yeah. Also, the Security and Compliance Center has a ton of stuff for being able to tell what's going on in OneDrive. So when you go to your admin center and you go to the, let's see, you go to in the admin centers section, there's an admin center called Security and Compliance, and that opens up a whole other Office 365 console and a new window with permissions, security policies, data management. So that was another one of the concepts that we talked about was that whole DLP, data loss prevention, which is really what we discovered, data loss enforcement, which means you're enforcing rules that say, data only gets retained a certain amount of time, etc. So that was another one of the post-deployment things that we talked about. I don't know, this version of the slide deck that I'm looking at is it must have been before we actually finished it, because it's got a bunch of empty slides. So I think the part with DLP isn't even in this one.
So that must have been the slides that I was responsible for.
Yeah.
As we broke it out, you take slides 50,
That would explain everything.
Yep. We'll wing this one.
But you can go into the whole Security and Compliance Center and be able to go do very specific searches, just like historically you'd be able to do with for Exchange, for when you had archive searches where you had to go look for certain concepts and do queries across mailboxes. Well, you can do that all across Exchange and SharePoint with the Compliance Center. Go look for a certain keyword, Lori and I, she's in the chat window, we worked at a company that had a big accounting scandal, and we had to go through all the mailboxes and look for certain keywords and things, and spit out all these reports and things. So that's where another thing you can do, except you don't even if you're not doing e-discovery, like we talked about in the other Power Hour about that, is that it's just a search. It's really just another search interface into looking for files in SharePoint. So that just gives you a completely different, more of an admin looking interface, but it's just search. So.
Yeah, and this is another one of those things. The power of the cloud is that they update this stuff all the time. And the reporting piece is one of the pieces that has really gotten a lot of attention, because they recognize that there are some very legitimate reasons why people don't want to move to the cloud. And knowing where stuff is at, and knowing that there's both the reality and the perception of security when things are on-prem, and I think Microsoft is aware of that, and they're trying to address both of those things. But there are a bunch of great reports in there, and every time I turn around, there's new cool reports in there. So make sure you poke around in there. The reporting's kind of boring, but there's some great information in there.
Right. And, well, there's also a screen I remember seeing that shows you who has been things have been externally shared with, and that goes along the same lines. Do you remember where? I don't remember where that is. I can't find stuff when I go in there.
There was a trick to it, because I remember there wasn't a way to do it, and you found some tricky way to do it.
Awesome.
And I can't.
So
and that's the problem with Clever, right? Clever is the same thing as a crappy hack, but you figured out how to do it, and I don't remember where it's at now.
Yeah. But they also rearrange stuff in here. So yeah. I don't know. Does anybody in the chat room remember where that is? The setting to just see the list of people who things have been externally shared with. I don't even know if it's Office 365 or in SharePoint. I'm kind of clicking around in here, but yeah, that's one last thing that's a really good thing to be able to see, having to do with OneDrive and sharing.
Yeah, I think it was Office 365 where we were playing with it that you were rightfully very proud when we were able to find a way to report that.
And just remember, a lot of these concepts we're talking about aren't specific to OneDrive because they can apply to any library in SharePoint.
Yeah,
The things with OneDrive, yeah.
It's the document library.
Yeah, they just, it's supposed to be for your OneDrive, for your own personal documents, and that's the one that syncs, but a lot of these concepts like the reporting and the sharing and all that, that's for everything. But I guess people are more concerned with it
Yeah.
than with OneDrive because that's what people use the most day to day, just all their personal files. So we have to get a handle on it. All right. Let's see. Any last questions from anybody? Let's see. Searching the audit data shows all invites files being shared internally and externally. Okay. Lou says.
Yeah, I can't remember if that's where you found it. You backed into it some other way. Like it wasn't, here's the report on externally shared files. It was like, here's the report on guy's named Dave, and then there was some way to weasel it down and to get that. I can't remember.
Oh, Newhouse says, what happens to the OneDrive content when a user is terminated and or left the company? Can we disable sharing from OneDrive? So historically, with the My Sites, when you leave the company, your boss gets an email saying, this person had a My Site and they are no longer part of our company. Here's like your manager, who is your manager in an Active Directory, gets the link and takes them to that person's My Site, and that way that manager can go clean up their content. I think it still works that way in Office 365, but
yeah, so that's absolutely correct. I will add some stuff to it. Number one, like they're mentioning in the chat room, that only works if the manager field is completed and correct. And I've not seen a lot of that. Number two, that is a job that triggers when the user no longer shows up in a sync. So there's some logic in the background after a user doesn't show up so many times, and there's days and all that that's all configured. I would be curious, and I don't know if we have enough people in the chat room to get a good consensus on this. Most of the IT departments I'm seeing these days don't delete users anymore. They just disable them. They disable them and they move them to another OU and all that. So now there's no way, unless it gets pulled out of sync or something, for SharePoint or Office 365 to know that user's not with the company anymore. So it doesn't trigger all these automated processes. So I'm not sure what that looks like today. It's been a while since I've had to play with that in person, from both from the business process side and from the SharePoint side.
At one of the companies I used to work for, I believe we added that disabled switch to the SharePoint import settings.
To the AD sync, yeah.
Yeah. So that it would be able to know whether the person still worked there or not.
Yeah.
Since we didn't move them into a different OU, we just disabled them.
Yeah, and that's a wise thing because of things like doing searches. You don't want to remove users and lose the ability to figure out what they owned and all that.
Exactly. Yeah, deleting users from SharePoint can be treacherous.
Well, does the site collection go away though? That's the question.
Yeah. So then, if the thing that Corey said happens, they get pulled out of the user profile sync. If you've configured that automatic My Site deletion stuff, then yes, it will automatically be deleted.
I don't think automatic My Site deletion exists in Office 365 though.
Yeah, I'm always terrified of processes that automatically delete things. I don't trust myself enough to set the rules up correctly and think of every way I can screw myself. So I avoid those.
Okay, well, yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. Okay, I'm not sure where that would setting would be.
And on top of that whole coupling, you can't easily determine where the My Sites are at. That becomes important.
Right, and on-prem, you would go to the web app settings, right? To say that they automatically get deleted?
I think it's in the user profile service app.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, and now Lou in the chat room is saying you can change it from 30 days up to either 365 or 3,650 days via PowerShell.
Either 1 year or 10 years.
Yeah.
Good to know. All right. Thanks, everybody. Next week, I'm not having a power hour because I'll be teaching my workflows and forms class, right? Corey's going to be there, too. It's going to be so much fun. And thanks, Todd, for coming. That was very lively. That was a lot of fun. We had like almost 50 live viewers. So either OneDrive is a very, very popular topic or Todd is very handsome. One of those.
I think Todd got us that extra like 8 people.
Can they both lose? I don't. Oh, that's a tough one.
Todd's face got us that extra like 8 users.
Thanks, Mom. Retirement things like these.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Over and out.
See you guys. Thanks.